Hello, Sea Wolves, and welcome back to the show. Well, that was an interesting slow start, huh? What great fun that was doing the live show with you. Over 1,000 people watching live yesterday. Very cool. And well, let's get started with this show number 2, day 1 after the first more or less 24, yeah, actually it's 20 minutes past the start. So the first 24 hours of the race are officially over. Let's get into what's happened and what's going to happen next. Here we go. 3, 2, 1, cheers.
The King's a little bit overwhelmed by this Vendee Globe. He stopped dancing. The Queen as well. So we're about 24 hours into the Vendee Globe, and it's a good day. We got banana bread from Pierre Boatspeed from the team, homemade. And we've got some of my favourite chocolate from my favourite chocolate shop in Lomner. So it's a good day and happy. We're just coming up to Spain. We've had a fairly good night. We're in kind of the leading pack, so happy Sam and a happy boat for now. See you soon. Bye.
Hi, good morning. Everything is okay on board. There's no problems or anything. Probably didn't stay the best through the night. I'm not exactly sure. I was not very lucky with the wind shifts and the gusts. Each time I jibe, the wind turns. But we're making our way a bit through the ranking as well. So now I was gaining a lot on Guyo, but he came a bit back. We're just here side by side. He's just here. You can see him through the window. And first day at sea, almost 24 hours. A bit of headache. Didn't sleep much. I find it intense, but that's to be expected. I'm finding my rhythm, so now we have at the moment only 11 to 13 knots of wind, and that's why we jibe south. We're hoping to find more wind and right shift to go to the coast of Spain, and then changing to smaller sails as well. Voila! That's the plan for the next couple of hours. But before that, I will try to get another nap in and then lunch. So these things that are normal on land and simple on board, sometimes it's not so easy to just manage to fall asleep, I find, at the start of a race. Lots of emotions. All right. I hope you're having a sunny day in Sables-d'Olonne or elsewhere. Good travels back home.
Delicious. So, actually, very unusual to have a Vendee Globe. Some of you were saying if I can say Vendee Globe a bit more French. So, very interesting to see a Vendee Globe start that is very much without trouble. Of course, we did have Conrad Colman with a small problem, had a rope stuck in his propeller, so he needed to take some time to get that out, and he actually started about an hour after the rest of the race. And then actually made it to first place for a while. Of course, with there being almost no wind and the boat's more or less kind of floating a bit around in all kinds of directions, I wouldn't say like that it's really like super significant, but still kind of a cool way to start the Vendee, actually going in an hour later with having a problem right away and then making it the first place. That's probably a record of going from last place to first place in the shortest time in the Vendee Globe. So that's quite nice. And of course, we saw also that Boris Herman, I don't know, probably many of you, the Boris fans, have already seen this, but Boris had a small problem with one of his autopilot rams.
And I already got a little tech challenge. I had to change this while I was stopped. Luckily, the wind just came 5 minutes after I'd finished the job. The toolbox is still open. Here, this is where it sits. This is steering the boat. We have 2 of these. And for some reason, it had a problem. We did a lot of phone calls with the electronics people, and they're great assistant, and we swapped that thing over. I'm now confident that it's good.
Yeah, so interesting. I actually have the same ram on board of my boat. I used it for 6-7 years, I think. I never had any problem with it. Interesting that a bit of kit like that, which is like super reliable generally, really after all that preparation, months and months, and then literally in the first few hours of the race, you have something super important like that, you know, malfunction for mysterious reasons. Was it maybe the Russians? Who knows? But yeah, fortunately he had a spare on board, so I was able to repair that, and I'm sure they'll figure out what's wrong with it. Maybe it's like some kind of little electronic malfunction or some water ingress or well, who knows? I'm sure they'll figure it out, but interesting to see that that happened like so early in the race still, like little things, but it's important in the end. Okay, well, let's dive into where the race is now and what we can expect for the next 24 hours real quick. Yeah, so let's take first a look at the tracker here. Actually, a few of you commented that you can see here, like I have it also the tracker, that the flags of the boats that they kind of added to the design compared to the last edition are really obscuring very much, like you can't really see very good how everybody's positioned because of this kind of flag. So I actually have emailed, you know, like the technical people behind the race, let's say, to ask if they can remove that. So actually, if in the next few days you see those flags go away, so we have a nice clear image of it again, then you know who was maybe responsible for that. And well, anyway, we can sort of see what's going on. Of course, yeah, kind of cool to see that despite all of this, you know, very slow wind, slow weather, quite a strategic morning, let's say, really relying on skill as a sailor. And again, we see Sables-d'Olonne, I mean, definitely one of the absolute favorites, emerge already after a few hours in first place. Also, Yannick Besthaven from my top 5 in position 4 now. Many of you probably happy to know that we have Jean Le Cam actually ahead still of many of the race favorites after, you know, first 24 hours in his non-foiling boat. So Jean Le Cam in 10th place right now. And of course, second we have Sebastian Simon, also one of the favorites, but let's be honest, Sam Goodchild in 3, also one of the favorites. And Justin Metro, very cool to see with Team Snev, also in 5th place. Thomas Rouillant, not far off the top 5, also one of the big favorites in 6th place. So all in, Jeremy Bijou, of course, in 8th place. So all in all, not like super surprising who we have in the front of the pack. But it is cool to see that even despite the light winds, which kind of would favor, at least for the first few hours, some of the non-foiling boats. So it was nice for them to kind of be able to lead the race for a little while, a bit of a look back at the classics, let's say of a few editions back. But now that the wind is kind of filling in, we see that the foilers are, you know, quickly gaining pace. And one thing which is kind of interesting, if you actually look at the relative position, so we have Sables-d'Olonne kind of, you know, leading the fleet. Technically speaking, that means that the distance between him and the first waypoint is the shortest, because that's how the tracker calculates it, right? But at the same time, if we look at who are the most southern boats, actually Jan Richomme in his Paprika, and we also have Maxime Sorel right there. And that is actually interesting, because one could make the case that in this particular situation where the wind is going to like fill in more and more over the next 24 hours, we'll get into that into a minute, it might actually also be kind of beneficial to be a bit more south. So even though they're not really leading the race, you could make an argument that as the boat that are the most already in the southern position, because the wind is coming kind of, you know, really blowing in the direction where they're going. Right now, they're not exactly on a beam reach, but they're kind of on a nice downwind screech, let's say, but not fully downwind. And with the wind being a little bit low, of course, the more you kind of point even just a little bit more up, that gives you more relative wind. So we see that the race leader, so Sables-d'Olonne and kind of the boats around him, have kind of steered a little bit high in order to have a little bit more relative wind to get a little bit more speed. So they are a little bit more closer. On the other hand, some of the boats have chosen kind of to go to stay a little bit more southern, to go on a little bit less steep route. So they are already a few miles more south, but a bit more distant still, you know, kind of from Finisterre. However, as the wind fills in, they're going to kind of be able to use that a bit more southern position to then point maybe a little bit more up and gain a little bit more speed. And so, yeah, I don't know what the speeds are actually right now. It would be interesting to see. Joam is doing 18 knots right now, and Charlie is doing actually 19 right now, so a little bit faster, so a little bit more wind. But it's kind of similar to what we saw in the previous edition, where we had several of the foilers kind of just making west as fast as possible, and we saw Jean Le Cam and a few others like really doing some southing first, only to then sort of head for Finisterre. And in that particular case, of course, it ended up with actually Jean Le Cam taking the lead in the race for a little bit as he was going past Finisterre there. So I think again it will be kind of interesting to see. Depends a bit on the direction of the wind, how it will change, how it will fill in. But yeah, I wouldn't count out in this case sort of the group around Joam could actually be in a better position than we think. So the lead more on the western side can be a little bit deceptive looking in this particular moment in the race. Well, that's kind of it for the update, I guess, for where we are now. Now let's take a quick look at the weather. Let's use windy for it. So we got about 16 knots right now. And well, if we jump forward, let's zoom out actually a little bit more also still. We see that basically going to continue filling out today with the real strong stuff sort of about 10, 15, 16, 17 hours away. Then we really see this big orange patch starting to grow around Finisterre. And then as we go into tomorrow, so basically tomorrow 2 o'clock, so that's more or less 24 hours from now, that's when we really see the big stuff. So then we get 20 knots basically steady, and that's going to be, you know, they're going to be right around here at that point. So 24 hours from now, they're going to be right sort of above Finisterre with a little luck. And so, yeah, that means that at that point, so around 12 tomorrow, 14 hours tomorrow, they're going to be 23 knots steady with gusting up to about 32, 34 knots. And especially towards the night to the start of Wednesday. And yeah, as you can see, so they're going to be really just around the Cape, around sort of the Vigo altitude, I would say, right when it's at its strongest, right when we get that sort of 29 knots steady up to like 44, 45 knots in the gusts, the prediction says now. So it is going to get rough. Like the seas are going to get big, and they really, like a few people in the first episode were commenting like, oh no, they'll be way past Finisterre already when this weather's coming. No, make no mistake. They're going to be just around the corner at Finisterre when the absolute peak of this weather is hitting. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be some big waves, some big, I mean, it's not the Bay of Biscay anymore, but the seas are still very, very big there. Of course, it does help that the wind is kind of coming from land. So in that case, it's not going to be that crazy, but still deep waters over there. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting 48 hours, and especially from 24 hours or so behind now till about 48 hours. That's where we're really going to see some big weather, some big waves coming up, and yeah, we're going to see the speeds fly up. And yeah, again, I think we're going to see this question of, do we hug the coast? Do we wait a bit for the worst of the weather to get past before they kind of head more into the big ocean? We'll see. There are going to be a lot of strategic choices to be made there. Now I think that Conrad Colman actually really in a fun way kind of stood out yesterday, you know, getting stuff in his propeller, then being able to make it to first place for a little while. And I actually talked about this in the show yesterday, or I think on the chat yesterday before the show, that Conrad actually has made some very interesting, a bit innovative additions to his boat. He's really kind of gone kind of a different route, doing a bit of a wild innovation, let's say, all around his boat. And he made a really great video about it. So I actually thought it would be really cool to kind of include that in the show today and really sort of highlight all the cool things that he's doing, both kind of on the surface of his boat, with solar panels kind of all around, but also on the inside where he's kind of done a chair with Velcro, and he's made some kind of gathering systems, I guess, for all his ballast to be able to kind of shift it around more easily. So take a look what Conrad's been up to in his boat. Really fun, innovative stuff.
We pulled in the lifelines and the stanchions, and to create this sort of uninterrupted strip of solar power all the way down each side. Of course, there's more on the back, but we'll see that later. We built this new roof last year in the team as well, and so we chopped off the boat at the level of this bulkhead here, and then built this massive new roof that allows me to be safe inside the boat, and then also crucially have this really great helming active watch position where I'm sitting behind 5 millimeters of perspex as the waves of the Southern Ocean crash over my head. The last boat was brutally exposed, and so this is my revenge. What the boat? I wanted to really bring it up to be as modern as possible, and so I chopped out all the floors here, and now that's the bottom of the boat. So we are 40 millimeters away from the sea, and at the very front of the boat, it is just laminated layers of carbon fiber without the foam layers. And so the front of the boat is only 3.5 millimeters thick. Yes, that is terrifying when you say it like that. The reason that I did that is because this used to be ballast, but the way that the rule treated that initially wasn't very efficient. So the rule has evolved subsequently, and now I cut out these ballast tanks and then built these ones. And so it's essentially like having 1,300, yeah, okay, so a rugby team lined up on the side of my boat the whole time, hiking out, only this way I've got ballast and I don't need to buy them beer at the end of the day. So it's cheaper overall. I have to, with every tack or jibe, take all the weight that is here on this one and chuck it over to here on this one. So that is a crazy, massive job. So I do that in one step. I take it off the bunk and then make it little. But that's a really inefficient way of using my energy. So what we've also invented is, we call this the train. So you can imagine the choo-choo train. We've got 6 of these stacking bags that slide across together. And we've made the whole boat set up so that the weight will slide really easily from one side to the other. So we had to move bits of boat around to make sure that would be easy, but now that system is coming on place. But then finally, the most important role on board the boat, we built this incredible carbon fiber chair here, so it weighs very, very little, and is actually Velcroed to the floor. Because if you can imagine that this boat, when it's sailing, heels at 25 to 30 degrees all the time, and so you really need to stick your butt down onto the bottom of the boat. I have the option of moving this chair around, and even putting it backwards. So as the boat crashes into the waves and accelerates and decelerates, I can be sitting here with my back to the waves and back to any potential collision and be safe and sound. And I mentioned that sleep. Well, sleep is quite a challenge on board, most notably because I always need to be engaged in what's going on around me, both weather and also ships, to avoid a risk of collision, and also to make sure that I don't get knocked over by a dark cloud that I'm not anticipating. So that means that I sleep for 20 minutes at a time, and loading those sleeps back to back, I will get maybe 5 hours of sleep per day. And I do that, of course, because this is an extreme racing boat. Here. So I have my stacking bags just above me. So I've got a couple of 100 kilos of material above me here. And then I've got a handle to help me get in if the boat is heeling a lot. And then I've got these cloths here that hold me in. And then of course, I've got a nice mattress, because otherwise I'm sleeping on 2/3 of a millimeter of brutally cold carbon fiber. That now is my boat, now that it's mine. And I've been able to bring all of the little modern touches and improvements and optimizations to it. And it's up to you to follow the race and then decide whether you want to come and join me, because the last chapter of this boat has not yet been written and I'm already looking for the new owner. So I'll see you out there.
Cool, huh? Well made. I think that's really the type of things that when you're on a bit of a budget, but still like really kind of innovative in the sailing part itself, really the boat handling and like small things like that. I think that's personally very, very cool to see kind of the things that he's done. And yeah, I guess that's it for most of the show today. I had one kind of cool idea because last edition we had quite a few musicians, you know, kind of making music, songs about some of the skippers. And I thought actually this year we could kind of make a cool challenge. So if you want to do something creative yourself and kind of get on the show, I thought of a really cool way. Because one thing that I often do whenever I'm doing like a multi-day solo sailing trip is I listen, this is actually kind of a funny confession, but I listen to a lot of trucker blues, so American trucker blues, because it's kind of just really fun music with a lot of humor, and it's you know, about guys driving the big truck, you know, across the American desert, things like that. And so I was thinking, you know what? Maybe we got some great musicians here amongst the SeaWolves who could make some sailor or sort of trucker blues, let's say, but you can actually apply it to the Imoca. So anybody who makes like a cool song can be just a trucker blues song that's like applicable in a good fashion, or it could actually be Imoca blues. So if you can come up with like a cool, funny, quirky blues song about, you know, sailing your Imoca for 3 months around the globe and do it in that real kind of funny blues style, send it in. You're definitely getting on the show if you can pull it off. So that's kind of a cool thing to put out there so we can get creative with the whole group here today throughout the race. Who knows? We might write like a nice musical hit for the show. Would be cool, right? So that's it for the show for now. Hope you enjoyed. Of course, make sure to like, subscribe, comment below what you think is going to happen, who is going to take the lead, and I'll see you in 24 hours. Ciao, ciao.